Yes, lads, you're right, and welcome. The international break still going on. Not for much longer, though. Not for much longer, but it's still going on. We've got another week or so of the international break before we get to see our lovely Liverpool come back, but we can't wait for that one. But I've got two more videos lined up for you. One, this one, imagining what if the Premier League had a trade system like the NBA. And the second one, probably coming out Wednesday or Thursday. What if the Premier League had NBA style playoffs? You got a lot of good content to look forward to. I can't really tell. I'm into my NBA, I'm into my Premier League. What's not to love? But this, what if the Premier League had trades? I think it's an interesting topic. I think we've seen like a couple of trade moves in the past. You know, Sanchez and Mkhitaryan, the main ones. But you've had Gallas and Ashley Cole's another one, for example. But I think there'll be real potential for some interesting moves. And I've drawn up 5 current day ones, so ones that I could see happening right now, and 6 that have for transfers that have happened or nearly happened in the past that I think would have got them over the line. And we're going to discuss them. We're going to figure out how likely they would be, and we're going to try and make an educated guess on how that would impact both teams, or even all 3 teams' seasons as a whole. So, if you're new here and you're not already, make sure you're hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, following the socials, they're all down below. You don't want to miss out on content. And let's just get straight into it with present day trade number 1. Now this is the one you've seen on the thumbnail. Liverpool, Chelsea and Southampton in a 3-team trade, with Liverpool receiving Mason Mount, N'Golo Kante and Christian Pulisic. Chelsea received Diogo Jota, Roberto Firmino and Kyle Walker-Peters, and Southampton received Fabio Carvalho, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and Trevor Chalobah. Now, there is a world, and I'm not going to rule it out, I just didn't include it because I thought it's a little bit too much for Chelsea, where they give Sterling to Liverpool as well. So they trade Sterling off to Liverpool. I think there's a world where that could happen, but I also think there's a world where Chelsea would actually keep Raheem Sterling and just try and move him on to a different team in order to secure maybe a midfielder. But how would this work for all 3 teams? Well, Liverpool, why would they make this trade? They would make this trade because it solves problem areas. The midfield is a massive problem area, and Mason Mount is clearly a big target for Liverpool. He's looking like he's joining the summer for a big fee. I think Liverpool would trade to get him in this fancy world where trades are a thing. And they get N'Golo Kante on top of it. Now, N'Golo Kante is on an expiring deal. So I think Liverpool will be moving on an expiring deal, and Firmino, they'd happily take on back in Kante just for... They'd take the risk on him. They would see if they could, help him through this injury things he's suffering through. And if they can, they get one of the best DMs in the world, fully fit, and it solves a massive problem area for them. I think they'd take that risk. And Christian Pulisic, very much out of favour at Chelsea, I feel, especially when Mudryk and Madueke develop more. Obviously, with the moves they're getting in this trade of Jota and Firmino, he'd be pushed further down the pecking order. They've got Joao Felix. They're going to get Nkunku as well in the summer, so there's a lot there. I believe they'd happily move on Christian Pulisic, and Liverpool would take him. He's worked under Jurgen Klopp before at Borussia Dortmund. Jurgen Klopp thought highly of him. We've tried to sign him a couple of times when he was at Dortmund. I think Jurgen Klopp would love the idea of working with Christian Pulisic as a project. Now, Chelsea received Jota, Firmino and Kyle Walker-Peters. Jota and Firmino are self-explanatory. Chelsea need goal scorers, and Firmino and Jota would come in and instantly become Chelsea's best goal scorers. I think it's a gamble that Chelsea would take. Obviously, it'd be interesting to see how the dynamics would work with Nkunku and Jota and Felix and Madueke and Mudryk and all that. But I believe Potter and Chelsea would make it work because I think Jota and Firmino are very flexible players. And Kyle Walker-Peters, obviously they've got Malo Gusto coming in the summer. But I believe that Chelsea would happily take Kyle Walker-Peters on. He can play left back and right back. He offers a good amount of depth there. And considering that one fullback for Chelsea is getting moved on in a trade later down the line, I believe they'd take Kyle Walker-Peters on to just be a really good depth option. And you can even probably do a job in the back 3 at centre-back. Now Southampton, this is the one where people will question it. Why would Southampton do this trade? There's a real chance Southampton go down. And if Southampton go down, their players instantly lose a lot of value. So what they get out of this trade is Liverpool send them Fabio Carvalho and Oxlade-Chamberlain. That's a sweetener to ensure that they get their side of the deal, Mount, Kante and Pulisic. And that was the part that was convincing me maybe Chelsea would attach Sterling onto it as well. So if you want to think Raheem Sterling comes to Liverpool, that's fine. That's a trade I could also see happening. But Fabio Carvalho and Oxlade-Chamberlain, one of them is a fantastic young attacking midfielder who has not been utilised correctly at Liverpool. A very annoying thing. But yeah, he's not been utilised correctly at Liverpool. Oxlade-Chamberlain obviously played at Southampton in the past. 27 years of age, on an expiring contract. Southampton can either use him for a year, try and get the best out of him, or move him on for another young piece. That's how that would work. And Trevor Chalobah, a centre-back, he can play DM as well. Just a really good depth option, young as well. A lot of a chance to develop for him. And I think that fits more so the mould of what Southampton are trying to do with their younger players and their transfer strategy and everything. So I believe that's a realistic trade. I believe it could happen. Once again, Raheem Sterling could be involved in it. But the big one that people will be mentioning right now is Romelu Lavia. Obviously, Chelsea are very much in for him, and he is mentioned later on down the line in a trade. So keep your eye out for that one. But trade number 2, and this is a big one. Trade number 2 is a big one. Now, trade number 2 involves Harry Kane. Now, Harry Kane would be moving to Manchester United. And this is a major, major, major package for both teams. So in this trade, Manchester United receive Harry Kane, Lucas Moura and Japhet Tanganga. And in return give up Anthony Martial, Jadon Sancho, Victor Lindelof, Dean Henderson, Tyrell Malacia and Donny van der Beek. That's a lot of pieces to give up for Harry Kane. It is a lot because Japhet Tanganga and Lucas Moura aren't really going to offer the same impact, but this is very much a win-now move for Manchester United. This will put them straight up into title contention. This would be like in the NBA. It's basically like the Phoenix Suns trade, where they trade for KD, and instantly they go up into title contending. The realm of title contending. I believe Tottenham will do that because the package they get back offers them the opportunity to blow up this team, blow up this current regime, and try again on a completely clean slate. They've got a lot of expiring contracts there. They've got a lot of players with good trade value who they could move on to pick up younger pieces or different pieces, or even sell off. That is something that has to be considered as well. It's a lot to give up. Manchester United do lose a lot of depth. They do. But I think Lucas Moura could be an interesting option for them. I don't believe they trade Lucas Moura. I think they keep him to be a backup. He's a very flexible backup. He's on an expiring contract as well, so they don't need to worry about him staying long term and developing very well and all that. I think the biggest losses in this deal for United would be Sancho, obviously, was a lot of money to outlay for him, and Tyrell Malacia, because I think he's a really solid backup left back. But I think that's the level of pieces you've got to give up to get someone like a Harry Kane, especially when there isn't draft capital like there is in the NBA, because we don't do a draft in this league, so you've got to give up a couple more players. I think it'd hurt United to let go of Malacia and Sancho, but I think they would do it to get a player of the ilk of Harry Kane, and then they could have their front four of Kane, Fernandes, Rashford, Antony. Crazy. Whereas Tottenham, they get the chance then to potentially move Heung-min Son on and have a much younger front three of Sancho, Kulusevski and Richarlison. They get a young piece at left back in Tyrell Malacia to move on from Ivan Perisic. Tyrell Malacia, I believe, can also play at centre back. Dean Henderson solves their goalkeeping issue really, really well. Donny van der Beek is an interesting one. Maybe the next branch comes in, sees something in him, maybe not, and then he gets moved on again. Victor Lindelof, it's not hard to get into that Tottenham back line. Victor Lindelof will come in and probably be the second best. I think that's a trade that I could see happening, but you've got to understand these big trades for these star players, they're very hard to do, especially without draft capital, so that's why United give up so much. I've designed all these trades myself, and I believe that they're all within the realms of possibility. Obviously, if you agree, if you disagree, let me know down in the comments. Let me know what you do. Let me know what trades you think could potentially happen, and try and keep them realistic. Let's not do, Mo Salah for Ainsley Maitland-Niles or something. Let's try and keep them realistic, eh? But trade number 3 does not involve a top 6 team, a traditional top 6 team. They are in the top 6, and it involves Newcastle and Leicester. Now, this is the one that I had the biggest sort of thing with about whether... I've just got them all up on my phone, that's what I'm grabbing. This is the one I've got the biggest sort of thing about, I don't know how realistic it is. This is the one that's probably out the realm of possibilities the most. And it's where Newcastle receive James Maddison, Youri Tielemans and Ryan Bertrand, and Leicester receive Joe Willock, Martin Dubravka, Alan Saint-Maximin and Jamal Lewis, and potentially Sean Longstaff on top of that as well. Now, that's a move for Newcastle that instantly pushes them up the table, instantly makes them, for me, dead set to top 4. Maddison, one of the best creators in the country, one of the best creators in the Premier League, and I think giving them players like Isak and Wilson to work off, players who can actually score goals when they can be bothered to, that gives them much more, room and much more sort of ways of playing, should I say. It gives them many more options for how they want to do it. Obviously, it'll be disappointing for them to lose Alan Saint-Maximin. He's a real big threat for them. But Leicester are giving up 2 of their best players. They're going to have to get some quality back. And Alan Saint-Maximin, it was between him and Almiron. And I think Leicester would much rather have Saint-Maximin. And obviously, there's been things about Saint-Maximin not really, settling. Like, he hasn't really had the best of seasons. And I think Newcastle would do that. Now, Leicester get Joe Willock and Saint-Maximin as the landmarks, good young English midfielder. But he at Newcastle, his role will be taken up by Youri Tielemans most likely. Alan Saint-Maximin, obviously, Maddison can play on the wing. Or maybe they even move to a 2-striker setup and have Maddison sitting behind. There's a lot of possibilities there. But for Leicester, they get one of the most exciting wingers in the league on his day. They get a really good young English midfielder. They get a goalkeeper who can actually challenge, if not start ahead of Danny Ward. And they get a left back. They get off Ryan Bertrand's bad contract and get a nice young piece in Jamal Lewis, who maybe they move on for just better players, or maybe he comes and plays a part. I know that Leicester they've had to sign a young Danish lad who's at left back, and he's been very good to start off with. Gives him a little bit of competition, but yeah. And Sean Longstaff, that's one that it's another one like the Sterling one. You could see it and you couldn't. I think Sean Longstaff is one that Newcastle would really try and keep a hold of, but I think if Newcastle were told the deal's off unless you give us Sean Longstaff, I think Newcastle would give up Sean Longstaff for it, because I think the potential of combining Tielemans and Maddison with Joe Linton and Bruno Guimaraes, I don't think Leicester miss out on that. Not Leicester, Newcastle. I don't think Newcastle miss out on that. So, again, like I said, that's the one that's probably the biggest reach, the biggest stretch. Now, we're moving on to trade number 4 here, involving league leaders Arsenal. This is one I could really see happening. I could really see this one happening if it was a thing. And it's Moises Caicedo to Arsenal. Brighton receive Kieran Tierney and Amadou Onana. And Everton receive Eddie Nketiah, Billy Gilmour, Jan-Paul van Hecke and Jakob Moder. Now, Moises Caicedo instantly comes in and makes the Arsenal midfield better. Instantly. No doubt in my mind about it. He gives really good depth for Thomas Partey. He's a similar profile, so if Partey was scar injured, Caicedo slots in seamlessly. Done. I think Arsenal would do that in a heartbeat. Brighton, why would Brighton do this when they lose one of the best players in Moises Caicedo? They pick up a really good young piece in Amadou Onana, who I believe can play a similar type of role. And they get Kieran Tierney, who I think is very good in the back 3, at both left wing back and left centre back. So I think that's a project for the Zerbi to work on, and I think it's something that they will be really intrigued by. And obviously Everton, they're losing Amadou Onana, so they get back Eddie Nketiah, Billy Gilmour, Jan-Paul van Hecke and Jakob Moder. They're the type of pickups that Everton needs, younger pieces who aren't on massive money, who can come in and develop and maybe become first team players who they can then trade on in the future for more assets, sell on in the future for more money. I think the biggest stretch is Eddie Nketiah, but I believe that with Florian Balogun, I hope I said his name right, coming back in from Reims with Will Still as manager, and I think he's better than Nketiah, and I think Arteta would like to see Balogun get more time to develop, and there's Leandro Trossard as well. So I could see Arsenal happy to let go of Nketiah if it meant that they were able to get in Moises Caicedo. That's one that I could really see happening. It might be a little bit too much to give up for Arsenal, it might be a little bit too much to give up for Brighton, maybe, in your eyes. But I believe in that. I believe in that. Now, number 5, this is the other one I was on about earlier, the Romelu Lavia one. And it's another 3-team trade. Manchester City, Chelsea, and Southampton. Chelsea and Southampton trading with each other again. Interesting. This doesn't involve any of the players from the previous trade, though. So, in reality, every single one of these trades could happen. Manchester City, though, they're the wild card in this. Who are they getting? Well, they're getting left-back Ben Chilwell. Chelsea, well, they get Romelu Lavia. And Southampton get Armando Broja, Conor Gallagher, and Calvin Phillips. Now, that's a lot to give up for Chelsea, potentially in your eyes. It's a lot to give up for Southampton. They lose one of their best players this season, a really good young prospect. But this is one I could really see happening. Manchester City need a left-back, plain and simple. Nathan Ake's been fantastic. Don't take this as me slagging off Nathan Ake. He's been an absolutely fantastic left-back this season. But he's not a left-back. And I think, you know, Pep Guardiola will be all over the idea of having Ben Chilwell in his squad at left-back. And he really only has to give up Calvin Phillips, who I don't think he's got the best relationship with, to get him. Which I believe they will be all over. All over it. Now, Chelsea, they get Romelu Lavia, one of the best young DMs in the league. Shown so many bright things this season with Southampton. He was bought by Southampton this season, and Chelsea tried to buy him 4 weeks later, which just goes to show how promising he is. I think Chelsea would do this deal. They sacrifice a bit more depth, but they're getting a player who can come in and partner Enzo Fernandez and make that midfield incredibly strong, and it would free up Enzo Fernandez as well, which is why I believe they would happily take a bit of a loss in terms of giving up more players to get this man, Romelu Lavia, over the line. Now, Southampton, they get Armando Broja, one of the very few strikers who's actually had success at Southampton. Success is a strong word, he got 5 goals, but considering Southampton strikers of recent years, 5 goals is a lot of goals. They also get Conor Gallagher. Now, Conor Gallagher fits the mould of a Southampton midfielder. Young, promising, got a lot of aggression, got a lot of, fight, and I think he would be one who would be there as a stopgap thing. He would come in to Southampton before the season and then hand in a trade request a year later once he's built up his stock there and moved on to a bigger club. And Calvin Phillips has to get out of Manchester City, and I believe Southampton, less pressure, gets to play alongside England teammates and Gallagher and Ward-Prowse. I think that would be an interesting midfield to look at, and I think that would be the right place for Calvin Phillips to go, and he'd probably end up following a similar trajectory to Conor Gallagher, where he stays there a year and then moves on later on down the line for more pieces for Southampton. But yeah, that's all the present day trades. How would I rank them? I mean, I know what one's at the bottom. It's the Newcastle and it's the Leicester one. That's the least likely. That's the one that I could least likely see happening. Then it would probably be the Harry Kane one, because it's very hard to see trades for star players working, but that's the only way I could really structure it. Then it would be the Moises Caicedo one. I think Brighton ended up giving up a lot to get back a little bit less, but maybe that's something that they want to see happening. Then it's probably the Ben Chilwell one, because maybe Southampton want a little bit more for Lavia, but if they go down, I don't think they're in a position to ask for that. And then for me, the most likely one is the Mason Mount Diogo Jota one. I believe that is the most likely one. Or is it with the attackers? Ooh, maybe not. Maybe because they're bringing in Nkunku and they might tie down Felix to a longer term contract. Maybe it does end up being the Ben Chilwell, Romelu Lavia, Calvin Phillips, Conor Gallagher, Armando Broja one. Maybe. No, yeah, I think it is. I think the Ben Chilwell one is the most likely of all the trades to happen. And then the Liverpool, Chelsea, Southampton 3-team trade drops down into second. But yeah, that's all the present day trades. I think they're a really interesting mix. I think I could see them all happening, although some are more likely than others. And I think it would create a really interesting dynamic in the league. There'd be a lot of risks. There'd be a lot of expiring contracts. There'd be a lot of change up in the league. And I think that would be the most interesting thing to look at. But we're not just here to talk about what the present day would look like. We're here to talk about what the past would have been like if certain trades had been done. if certain trades had been done. Now. For these past season trades, some of the names involved are ridiculous. They are ridiculous. We've got some of the biggest transfers in Premier League history and some of the biggest nearly transfers in Premier League history. I'm not going to keep you waiting. Let's just get straight into these past season trades. Starting off, we're going back to 2013 and 2014. Just at the start of that season, Uruguayan Luis Suarez handed in a transfer request. Arsenal put in a bid of £40 million and £1, which technically was his release clause, but Liverpool rejected it, broke the rules, somehow got away with it. Can't believe it to this day, but hey ho. Luis Suarez went on to have one of, if not the greatest season of all time in the Premier League. 31 goals, 12 assists in 33 games, ridiculous. While Arsenal started off brightly, and then when the goals dried up, their title challenge fell off. Now, what if the trades were a thing and Arsenal, instead of trying to put in a bid for Luis Suarez, were able to structure a trade package to get Luis Suarez to the Emirates? Well, I believe it goes something like this. Arsenal would end up getting both Luis Suarez and Pepe Reina, whilst Liverpool get Kieran Gibbs, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Theo Walcott and Serge Gnabry. Now that might seem like a lot for Liverpool to give up and not get much in return, but let's rewind back to 2013-14. Theo Walcott was one of the best wingers in the league, one of the brightest wingers in the league at only 25. Oxlade-Chamberlain, one of the brightest young talents in England at just 20. Kieran Gibbs, a solid young left back, which is a position that Liverpool really needed in that time. We had Jose Enrique there, who was injury prone. We had John Flanagan there, who was a bit naff. And we had Ali Sissoko, who was just naff. Not a bit, just completely naff. I think Liverpool would have happily taken a punt on Kieran Gibbs and seen how he developed. And Serge Gnabry, I think he fits in the mould of the youngsters that Liverpool were trying to develop. We had Suso, we had Sterling. I think Brendan Rodgers would have loved to develop Serge Gnabry at Liverpool. Now Arsenal get Luis Suarez, world-class striker, instantly comes in, jumps ahead of Giroud. If he can have a season close to what he had in 13-14, Arsenal will probably go on and win that title because they're able to sustain that run of form they had. And they get Pepe Reina, who, some people might not know this, Arsene Wenger was a massive fan of Pepe Reina and tried to sign him back in around 2010. Back in around 2010 when there was the whole Hickshire saga and the club was up for sale. Arsene Wenger offered £20 million for Pepe Reina and the club turned it down because we needed him there as an asset for the sale. I believe that Arsene Wenger would go back in for Pepe Reina. This was a worse version of Pepe Reina. He declined a little bit. But I believe Arsene Wenger would go in and get Pepe Reina to be his starting goalkeeper for that season. Liverpool would let him go. Rodgers was not a fan. We brought in Simon Mignolet. We let him go in the end to Napoli. I think he would have let Pepe Reina go in this trade to Arsenal with Luis Suarez to get back Walcott, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Gnabry and Gibbs. I think these past trades are going to be a little bit hard for people to wrap their head around with hindsight, but at the time, and I've asked a lot of people about this, I've done my research for this. Theo Walcott was so highly thought of. Oxlade-Chamberlain was so highly thought of. Liverpool's transfer strategy at the time was bringing in these young players with a lot of potential and developing them. It would have aligned with Liverpool's values. It would have aligned with Arsenal's strategy. I think that's the trade that really could have happened. And I think Arsenal fans will be a little bit gutted now that I've said it, that these trades aren't a thing. That the Premier League doesn't have trades, because they would have had another league title if they had 2013, 2014 Luis Suarez and Mesut Ozil. Oh, what a combination that would have been. But moving from one world-class striker to another. In the same window, Wayne Rooney also handed in a transfer request, citing his desire to leave for Chelsea before he signed a new £300,000 a week deal to stay at Old Trafford. Now, what if he hadn't signed that new contract? What if David Moyes went, no, we're not going to risk it, we'll trade you. We will trade you. Disgruntled superstar, we'll get you gone and we'll get some pieces in. There was a manager who really liked him, and it was Mourinho at Chelsea. And Jose Mourinho's Chelsea team, they weren't really what he wanted yet. So he would have been willing to give up a lot to get in a player that he really wanted in Wayne Rooney. So, in this trade, where Chelsea receive Wayne Rooney, Manchester United receive Juan Mata, David Luiz, Kevin De Bruyne and Romelu Lukaku. Now, once again, hindsight, massive overpay by Chelsea. But at the time, Juan Mata really not in Jose Mourinho's plans. David Luiz not in Jose Mourinho's plans. Romelu Lukaku not in Jose Mourinho's plans. Kevin De Bruyne not developing well, not in Jose Mourinho's plans. They would move all of those on to get a win-now player for a win-now manager. Wayne Rooney still had another 2 to 3 years at the very top level. If they could have combined him with Oscar, with Willian, with Hazard, that again, another team that really could have went on and won the league that season. They had that quality and they had a genuinely world-class manager. And I think that's a really good trade for Manchester United as well before we move on. It's a really good trade for Manchester United. They get in a young piece in Kevin De Bruyne. They replace Wayne Rooney, who could play at the 10. They still had Van Persie at the time, let's not forget. Wayne Rooney was more so playing on the 10. They replaced Rooney with Juan Mata and Kevin De Bruyne, which is really good value for them. Even if, Juan Mata ends up moving off to the right and Kevin De Bruyne moves into the middle. I think United would take that punt on that young player. Romelu Lukaku comes in as an understudy to Van Persie to start off with. Still gets his game time, but is an understudy to start off with. And David Luiz, Rio Ferdinand and Vidic will really come to the end of their careers. David Luiz will be a nice sort of stopgap for them between when they can, move on from Ferdinand and bring in more that later on down the line. I think that's a win for both teams because both teams at that point were in differing phases. United were rebuilding, Chelsea were contending. Chelsea needed the win-now player, Chelsea needed a superstar, and they get one in Wayne Rooney. Whereas United are able to start their rebuild, move on from their ageing squad, and have some good young pieces, and, a star caliber player in Juan Mata, who, I can't believe Jose didn't like him, but they get a star player in Juan Mata, really good young pieces, and a stopgap. I think that's a win for both teams. I really do. Not including hindsight, because we know how Kevin De Bruyne turned out, we know how Lukaku turned out, etc, etc. But in the moment, I think that would have been a win for both teams. Trade number 3, we're going back to 2015-16. Young English winger Raheem Sterling hands in a transfer request, refuses to sign a new contract, says he only has eyes for Manchester City, and after a good couple of weeks and refusing to turn up to training, Raheem Sterling gets his move to Manchester City for $49.5 million. But what if we had trades? What if we had trades and instead of $49.5 million, Liverpool received a package of 4 players? Well, I believe it goes something like this. Manchester City received Raheem Sterling, whilst Liverpool received James Milner, Stefan Jovetic, Matija Nastasic and Jesus Navas. Now, James Milner was on an expiring contract and was going to join Liverpool anyway. This is very much a sign-in trade. Stefan Jovetic was very highly rated by Liverpool's scouting department. Still had a lot to give if he could get past his injury problems. Matija Nastasic was a good young centre-back. At a time where Liverpool were having centre-back problems, Skrtel wasn't good enough, Sacco was inconsistent, Lovren was crap. Kolo Touré was old, Emre Can was probably our best centre-back and he's a centre-mid. And Jesus Navas comes in as the Sterling replacement. Can play on the wing, can play at wing back. I think that's it. I think Liverpool would take that trade. He's a bit older, but Liverpool are getting some good young pieces and some players that can help them now and help develop these players as mentors. Whilst Manchester City receive the player they want in Raheem Sterling, who can come in straight away, have an impact and help that Manchester City team in title challenges. Again, I think that's a trade where both teams win. I really, really do. Stefan Jovetic, if he could stay fit, was a fantastic footballer. Matija Nastasic, really good centre-back. James Milner, we know how James Milner ends up being for Liverpool, really, really important player. Again, I think I've went 3 for 3 on these trades. 3 for 3 on these past trades. This is a weird mix though, this next one. A weird mix, this next one. We're doing a bit of what actually happened and a bit of what could have happened. We're going back to January 2018, to the most infamous trade in Premier League history when Alexis Sanchez and Henrik Mkhitaryan swapped clubs. But at the time, there was also murmurings of Jose Mourinho wanting to link up with his former Real Madrid star Mesut Ozil, who was also on an expiring contract. Now, what if Arsenal just went, we're not going to take the risk of him re-signing. We're just going to let him... We want to get some trade value rather than risk free agency. I think Manchester United would have given up a fair amount to get the pair of them together. And I believe that package would have went something like this, with Manchester United receiving Alexis Sanchez and Mesut Ozil, and Arsenal receiving Henrik Mkhitaryan, Anthony Martial, Juan Mata and Luke Shaw. Now, on the face of it, that's a lot to give up. You know, we know Luke Shaw's turned into a fantastic left back. Anthony Martial, you know, when he's fit, is a fantastic striker. And we know how Sanchez and Ozil ended up turning out. But at the time, and again, you've got to go back to the time, you've got to immerse yourself in that moment, Sanchez and Ozil were still two of the best players in the league. Jose Mourinho, as the manager of Manchester United, was not a fan of Luke Shaw, was not a fan of Juan Mata, was not a fan of Anthony Martial, and was not a fan of Henrik Mkhitaryan. So he gets to move on 4 players who he's not a big fan of to get in 2 of the best players in the league. Whereas Arsenal get to restart, rebuild. They've got a core there of Lacazette and Martial as a striker core. They managed to solve left-back problems. Nacho Monreal was coming to the end of his career at Arsenal. They're getting a solid left-back in Luke Shaw, who, under the right management, can develop. And Henrik Mkhitaryan and Juan Mata, Mkhitaryan, I think he was only like 27 at the time, in his prime, really good player. Juan Mata at 29, in his prime, really good player, experienced head to bring into that Arsenal team, who also have the technical qualities to play in an Arsenal midfield as well, let's not forget that. Arsenal also had Aubameyang as well, so then their front three is looking frightening. So I think that's a trade that Arsene Wenger and Mourinho would do. I really, really do. And you've got to remember with these trades, I know in the moment that Anthony Martial turned down Arsenal, but when it comes to trades, it's not the player's choice. It's the team's. That's the difference. So if Anthony Martial could have hated the idea of playing for Arsenal, but if he was traded, he had to go. He had to go. That's what's so interesting about this. That's one probably a little bit more outlandish. Maybe, you know, Arsenal get a couple more pieces back because of Ozil and Sanchez's reputation. Maybe they get like a Marcos Rojo to go in at centre back. You know, who else did they have? Maybe there's a world where they end up with like an Ander Herrera, although I think that's quite unlikely. Maybe even they end up with an older version of Wayne Rooney. You know, who knows? Who knows? But moving on to trade number 4. Past trade number 5. And we're going back to what was, and what remains probably, the biggest flop in Premier League history. Fernando Torres to Chelsea. Fernando Torres to Chelsea. At the time, £50 million was a hell of a lot of money. It was a very much an Abramovich signing. World record transfer fee. But what if it was a trade instead? You know, Chelsea didn't only end up getting Fernando Torres, they got Raul Miereles as well. So, what if Chelsea decided to move forward their pursuit of Miereles and get in El Nino? What would they have to give up? Well, I see it going something like this, with Chelsea receiving Fernando Torres and Raul Miereles, and Liverpool receiving Daniel Sturridge, Yuriy Zhirkov, Joe Cole and Michael Ballack. Liverpool at the time could not be picky. Fernando Torres wanted to go. We couldn't be picky about who we ended up getting in return. And what we get in return is one of the best young English forwards at the time. Could develop into a world beater. Did develop into a world-class striker. You get Joe Cole, who was a really sort of interesting one. A really interesting one in the sense that Joe Cole could have been something. It depends what version we get. It depends if the injuries have killed him off. It depends what manager he's working under. I think they would have done that trade for Joe Cole. Michael Ballack, expiring contract, 33, can come in and still do a job in Liverpool's midfield though. That's more so your replacement for Raul Miereles. Experienced head, sells shirts. I could see that one happening. And Yuriy Zhirkov, Liverpool had Paul Konchesky at left back. Liverpool would take about any left back they could get their hands on to replace Paul Konchesky. Yuriy Zhirkov was not a very good left back, but he was better than Paul Konchesky. So Liverpool would have happily taken Yuriy Zhirkov. That's one that I could see happening and I couldn't see happening. Obviously, what it does is it combines Sturridge and Suarez earlier on. It gives, Fernando Torres ends up at Chelsea. His career probably doesn't end much different, but Joe Cole gets in at Liverpool a bit earlier. Maybe he develops differently. Maybe his career ends up being better than the shambles that it was at Liverpool. Michael Ballack and Steven Gerrard does a midfield partnership together, albeit they're both, in the 30s. Would have been a really interesting watch. And Yuriy Zhirkov, better than Paul Konchesky. I'm not going to complain. But the final trade of this video. The final trade. Trade number 6 of the past trades. We're going all the way back to the start of last season, when there was a big debate about Harry Kane. This is the second time he's been mentioned in this video, Harry Kane. He's been in the present section, he's now in the past. There was a lot of murmurings and rumours that Harry Kane to Manchester City was a possibility. A lot. And it never materialised in the end. Too much money, Levy didn't want to sell, etc, etc. But what if there was trades? What type of package would Manchester City have given up at that time to get the best striker in the league, who had just come off winning the Golden Boot and the Playmaker Award in the same season? Well, I believe it would have went something like this. Manchester City receive Harry Kane. Tottenham receive Raheem Sterling, Gabriel Jesus, Ferran Torres and Nathan Ake. Once again, it's a lot to give up by Manchester City on the face of it, but you're acquiring the best striker in the world at the time, who Tottenham really don't want to let go, because they still believe they're contending. They need to get a big package back. In the end, Raheem Sterling and Jesus left the season after. Ferran Torres was sold to Barcelona. Nathan Ake is the only one out of the group that remained. They do end up losing a lot of depth, but they have Grealish, they have Mahrez, they have Foden left. They get Harry Kane. They're really well set up. They get to keep playing the same system of the false nine, because Harry Kane can he has no problem adapting to that. Whereas Tottenham are able to retool. They're able to retool and start planning not only for the now, but for the future as well. They don't have Kulusevski at this point, because this happened at the start of the season. So they end up with a front three of Sterling, Son and Jesus. That is a pretty solid front three. They also have Ferran Torres in that mix, who can come in up front and on the wings. Really good depth option. And they get Nathan Ake. Once again, like I said earlier, Tottenham can't be picky about centre-backs, and Nathan Ake would have been a fantastic centre-back for them to have. Obviously, seeing how he's ended up turning out, I don't think Manchester City would let him go now. But at the time, he hadn't really had the best first season at the club. He was struggling to adapt, hadn't really found his feet. I think if they were presented the option to get Harry Kane, they would have given up Nathan Ake to get him, because Harry Kane would make that City team unstoppable. He would do. And there's even a world where Manchester City even give up a little bit more to ensure that they get Harry Kane. But yeah, that's it. That's the video. That's all the trades. What was your favourite one? What was the one that you think would be most likely to happen? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you're new here, you're not already, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, so you're here for Wednesday or Thursday, whenever it gets uploaded, for the what if the Premier League had an NBA playoffs style ending to the season. The title will be worked around. That's a bit long-winded, but you get what I mean. What if the NBA playoffs, but Premier League style? But yeah, that's all. Thank you for watching. If you're new here, I've already done that. Waffling. It's currently 2 o'clock in the morning. Late night recording session. Love yous all. Peace out. In a bit.